Ask anyone to list the pet hates of incoming US President Donald Trump, and immigration will likely be at the top.
They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime.
You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals.
There could be as many as 13.3 million undocumented migrants in the US, maybe more. And Trump wants them all gone, starting from day one of his presidency. But as we're going to see, that is going to cost billions of dollars. It might not even work. And the forced removal of hundreds of thousands of workers might end up costing the US economy even more. The American Immigration Council reckons that it would cost $315 billion to remove them all in one go. First, it would cost $89.3 billion to arrest them all. Building and maintaining detention centres would cost $167.8 billion. Then there'd likely be a legal bill of $34.1 billion. And finally, the government would have to spend $24.1 billion on deporting them. Of course, deporting 13.3 million people in one go would be next to impossible. So let's do some more sums. Let's say the Trump administration settled on deporting 1 million people annually. The American Immigration Council thinks that would cost the taxpayer $88 billion a year. It would take well over 10 years, which, assuming an annual inflation rate of 2.5%, will end up costing a total of $967.9 billion. The man tasked with the job of removing all these migrants, all these workers, is this man, Trump's new border czar, Tom Homan. He told Fox News how he was going to do it.
Public safety threats and national security threats will be the priority, because they have to be. They pose the most danger to this country. So we're going to prioritize those groups. Those that had due process at great taxpayer expense, and the federal judge says you must go home, and they didn't. They became a fugitive. So, and as for our work site, where do we find most victims of sex trafficking and forced labor trafficking? At work sites.
Sounds easy, doesn't it? Drop into factories and farms around the US, checking whether workers have a right to be in the US or not. No, not that easy. For a start, despite the election campaign rhetoric, the US simply doesn't have enough American-born people to fill all its jobs. Trump admitted as much at a town hall meeting with Latino voters that the US actually needs foreign workers.
I want them in even more than you do, and we're going to make it so that people can come into our country legally.
The National Foundation for American Policy predicts that the total number of American-born workers will peak in 2052 at 146.7 million, after which migrant workers will be the only source of growth. As it stands, migrant workers are already responsible for 88% of labour force growth in the US since 2019. Without migrants and their children, the US labour force would have declined by more than 1 million. Instead, the US labour force grew by over 4 million workers. Apart from the social costs associated with a drop in people like care home workers, school bus drivers, nurses, jobs migrants might do, we can estimate the price in cold hard cash. The implications on businesses, inflation, growth, and social security. The American Action Forum forecast before Trump's first term that if he managed to remove everyone he wanted, the labour force would shrink by about 6%. In real terms, that would have been $1.6 trillion in lost GDP. It's thought that would be $2.2 trillion today if he tries again. That's about 8% of the US GDP. Of course, it's not easy to work out exactly what migrants actually bring to a country, but we do have a pretty good idea about what they're sending back to their families. In 2022, it was more than $79 billion. That's after they've paid their bills and their taxes. Given those sums, the American Action Forum is these days questioning whether Trump will have the stomach for doing much more than sending home convicted criminals and strengthening security along the US border with Mexico. A lot of how policy is actually rolled out will depend on this guy, Stephen Miller. It was Miller who said America should be for Americans and Americans only. He was the architect of Trump's hardline first-term migration policies. He's now Deputy Chief of Staff for Trump's second term. And when I say hardline, he's often cited as the brains behind the so-called Muslim country travel ban in 2017. Under his watch, visa schemes were restricted across the board. Between Trump's election and the COVID-19 pandemic, applications for permanent residency, the coveted American green card, fell by 17%. He's been heavily critical of the H-1B visa program for highly skilled workers, and that could bring him into conflict with this man, Elon Musk. Yes, he's an ardent Trump supporter, but he became the world's richest man by running businesses. Businesses that need employees, skilled and unskilled. Here's what he wrote on X in January 2024, that immigration through visas like the H-1B should be increased. Ultimately, it's not clear what Donald Trump will do until he's sworn in on January 20, 2025. It's true that during his last administration, he increased the number of visas for temporary laborers, which he uses at his resorts and golf courses. We'll know then how strong his conviction will be to drive through his policies.